We're back on the record. In 14 CR 1432, Mr. Jones does appear in custody. He's represented by Ms. Smith and also Mr. Colvin. Mr. Rubenstein and Mr. Wade are both here for the people. Are we ready for our jury to come back to the courtroom?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you all. Call and invite them back in. Thanks. Back in the courtroom. Welcome back, everybody. I was going to just try to push forward to noon at this point, but once again, anytime anybody needs a break, if you'll just raise your hand and let me know, I'm happy to take a break for you. Thank you. And Investigator Pachota can retake the stand. He's still under oath. And Mr. Colvin, whenever you're ready to begin your cross-examination. Thanks.
Morning, sir.
Good morning.
So I guess the first thing I want to talk to you about is the idea of web artifacts that you were talking about previously. So if I understand correctly, when you go on a computer, you can specifically look for particular things that were seen on the web. Is that correct?
Yes.
And we saw an example of that yesterday. You showed us the picture from Mr. Jones' computer, Toshiba laptop, showing that picture that was introduced into evidence. It's the picture of the burned car. Is that right?
Yes.
And so when you find that on the computer, what we know is that the computer was used to access a web page that showed that particular picture. Is that right?
Yes.
So necessarily, the conclusion we can draw from that is anybody on any computer that went and looked up that article could have seen that picture. Is that right?
Not that particular one, because that was on that computer, if I understand your question.
Well, the picture itself, right? Not the data you pulled off of the computer, okay? But the picture itself is on a web page somewhere, right?
Yes.
That's why you're picking it up, because the computer you're examining went to that web page, right?
Yes.
And if I used my computer that day and I went to that web page, you could look at my computer and see that same picture on it, right?
Yes.
So I have no idea what the daily traffic at the Daily Sentinel's website is, but let's just, for this question, let's assume 500 people go to the Daily Sentinel website on this particular day this article's up, right?
Okay.
And if you got the computer for all 500 of those people, you could go in, do your analysis, and find that picture on 500 different people's computer, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now I want to shift gears for a second. Well, actually, I don't want to shift gears yet. As to that picture and that web thing, if I understood your testimony, in doing your analysis, it is only one time during the period of time we're focusing on in your testimony, which is sort of June 25th to the following week, maybe. Only one time did we go to the Daily Sentinel in that time frame, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Out of how long of a period of time do we go to the Daily Sentinel? 19 times?
That was during the course of the history of the computer and its temporary cache.
Okay. So we don't hit the Daily Sentinel news web page all that often, 19 times over the life of the computer, right?
That is correct.
What's the life of the computer?
It's from when the computer first began operation.
Okay. Do you know off the top of your head what the lifetime of the Toshiba laptop was?
I don't off the top of my head.
Okay. But it's certainly longer than a month or two, fair?
Yes.
Okay. So the Daily Sentinel's not a routine web thing, right?
Yes, there's a second side to that coin, but yes, the way you're asking it, that's correct.
What? Going to the Daily Sentinel website is only happening 19 times over the life of the computer, right?
Yes, however, if you will have your settings to delete your history, it may not reflect all the times it goes there.
Okay. When you when you examine a computer, do you look at the settings?
Not all the time.
Okay. Do you know what the settings were on the Toshiba laptop regarding browser history?
My recollection was 10 days, but I'm not 100% positive.
Okay. So you said over the lifetime of the computer, it's 19 visits to the Daily Sentinel webpage.
Right, as far as the parameters that were put in, I just opened it up for the entire computer.
Okay. And if the browser settings were set to delete the history, browser history after 10 days, does that mean 19 visits happened in 10 days?
If that was the setting and that area, it starts getting complicated, and that area wasn't written over by other data.
Okay. What I'm taking away from what you're telling me is you're not really sure how many times Daily Sentinel website was accessed in what time frame, because you don't know for sure what the browser setting was, and it doesn't sound like you know for sure what was deleted if there was additional visits there.
If there were hits that were deleted and overwritten by other data, I would not have been able to extract that.
And things get overwritten if it's deleted because of your settings and the computer just parks something over that space, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you have no way, you talked about how when you look at a computer, nothing's ever gone. It's still there. It's just not labeled. When they write over that stuff, that's when it's really gone. You can't see it anymore.
That is correct.
Okay. So the truth of the matter is, we really don't know how often the Daily Sentinel website's hit, right?
We just know what I found.
Okay. And what we know is that very close in time to a car fire happening in a parking lot down the street from that guy's place of employment, apparently someone went onto the Toshiba and looked at a web page talking about the car fire, right?
Yes.
And you've testified in this matter previously, right?
Yes.
And you agree a car fire in close proximity to your place of work is a startling event for most people, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, now, shifting gears. You did examine Ms. Bergfeld's computer. You talked about that, right?
Yes, sir.
And you did a similar analysis to the analysis you did on the Toshiba laptop and the Dell Tower, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, on Ms. Bergfeld's computer, you were looking for general connections to the case. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You're not going in there looking specifically for some particular piece of evidence, right?
Correct.
Because you don't know what's on that computer.
Correct.
One of the things you're looking for is photographs or things related to Carol Linderholm. Is that right?
Yes.
And the reason you were looking for things related to Carol Linderholm is at the time you're conducting your searches of the computer, you're aware of the fact that Ms. Linderholm was reported to be an employee of Models, Inc. True?
True.
You're also aware of the fact at the time you're conducting your searches that Ms. Linderholm was reported to have reported to have serviced Mr. Jones, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you obviously weren't present in the courtroom when Ms. Linderholm testified previously, is that right?
That's correct.
May I approach the witness, Judge?
Yes, sir.
Showing you what previously been marked as Defendant's Exhibit FFF. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, I do.
And what is that, sir?
There are two pictures of Carolyn Linderholm.
Okay. And she's in a state of, it's not extraordinarily explicit, but it's semi-explicit. Fair characterization?
Somewhat inappropriate, but not.
Okay. Where did these pictures come from?
Based on the string, they were on the HP Pavilion under Paige Dixon login, a temporary internet file.
Okay. More specifically, you, in the course of your investigation, found these pictures on Ms. Bergfeld's computer, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Judge, at this time, the defense would offer Defendant's Exhibit FFF.
Do you have an objection, Mr. Rubenstein?
I have no objection. For the record, Mr. Colvin showed me that during the break.
Okay. Defendant's triple F is admitted. Thank you.
Defense seeks permission to publish, Judge.
Any objection to publishing, Mr. Rubenstein?
No, sir.
All right, that's fine. You can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome.
While we are waiting for this to fire up, similarly to documents you've shown us from Mr. Jones' computer, this exhibit, you started out with, now it's up, I'll just go to it. Can I approach the...
Yes, sir.
So this language up here, page Bergfeld.9/HP Pavilion, that's your information, right?
Yes.
Okay. So really, what the computer is starting with is the C drive, hard drive, and then these settings. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this is not a temporary internet file. Is that correct?
The top, can you scoot that over a little bit?
Yes. Not true. Does that help?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This, it says it's a temporary internet file, right?
Yes.
Okay. Does that mean this picture is on a web page somewhere?
Yes.
Okay. Now, so it's accessed just like the photograph of the burnt car from the Daily Sentinel website, right?
Yes.
Does this tell you what website that came off of?
No.
And you don't have any way at this time to know what website that came off of. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The reason is when you pull the picture of the burnt car, there's information contained on there saying where that website was. Daily Sentinel's referenced in it, right?
Right, the caption.
Okay. This one obviously has no caption on it, correct?
It does not.
Now, the difference between this one and the burnt car picture from Mr. Jones' computer, that one was captured, the burnt car picture was captured as a function of the computer seeing this information and temporarily saving it. Is that right?
For this top picture, yes.
Okay. Now I'm talking about the burnt car picture.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. There was nothing in that burnt car picture that indicated it had been saved to the computer. Is that correct?
For me to have pulled it up, it was saved, but I think you're referring to user-generated save.
Thank you.
It was not user-generated saved.
Okay, so the computer's like doing it itself just so, because computers work in mysterious ways to most of us, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, had somebody wanted to, they could have taken that picture of the burnt car and physically saved it to the computer so they'd have it, right?
Absolutely.
These pictures, in fact, are a little bit different than the burnt car pictures because they actually show that they were in fact saved to the desktop. Is that correct?
The second one, looking at the string, you can see that it was actually saved to the desktop.
Okay. Now, that saving to the desktop is not something the computer would just automatically do for whatever reason.
That is a user activity.
And the only way that happens is if a human being intentionally does that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the written words here above these pictures are generated by the program that you are using to look at the computers, right?
The string?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. It says file created June 25th, is that right?
Yes.
The computer is telling you that this file showing this picture of Ms. Linderholm is in fact created on June 25th, is that right?
It is telling me that this picture first appeared on the desktop on the 25th of June.
Okay. Now, on June 25th, that's when it first appears on the desktop, and necessarily, then June 25th is the day some human being puts it there, right?
If they were saved from the internet, that would have been the date they saved it, if they saved it directly to the desktop.
Okay. Now, this label at the bottom, you wrote that label, is that right?
Yes.
Now, you did that with a number of different pictures and stuff. You put labels on them because you're trying to identify the relevancy of these particular things. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And again, when you're examining Ms. Bergfeld's computer, you don't necessarily know what all the important facts are, right?
Yes.
So you don't know for certain what the importance is of these pictures, but you know Carolyn Linderholm's a player in the case. This is a picture of Ms. Linderholm in a semi-state of undress, and it's on Ms. Bergfeld's computer, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. It is possible that if you have a picture on your computer and you want to, you could then post that picture on a website, right?
You can upload it, yes.
Okay. So, you can go to the web, you can get a picture, you can take it, put it on your computer. Flip side of that is you can go put it on the web if you choose to, right?
It can travel either way.
Okay. And you know from your examination of Ms. Bergfeld's computer that one of the places her computer one of the web areas the computer contacted was a website called escorts.com. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now you know from your investigation in this case, and frankly your expertise in these cases, plural, computer type cases, you know that escorts.com is a website where you can advertise your escort services, right?
Yes.
And you know that escorts.com is a place where if you're interested in that kind of behavior, you can go there and hire people, right?
Yes.
And you know that many times, not all, but many times people put up photographs on that website as part of their advertisement, correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, escorts.com, the data on that web page is not contained on Ms. Bergfeld's computer, correct?
That is a correct statement.
In other words, Ms. Bergfeld, had she chosen to advertise on escorts.com, she's putting information out there, and escorts.com would have that information on their server or their hard drive or whatever, right?
Yes.
That information, when she puts it out there, is not contained on her computer anymore. It's stored somewhere else, right?
Yes.
And the fact of the matter is, you, at this time, certainly have no ability to go find out what, if anything, Ms. Bergfeld had been advertising on escorts.com, right?
As in right now,
Yes, sir.
don't know how long they keep the records,
Right.
but if they only keep the records for 5 years, then that's true. I would not be able to obtain any records relevant to this case.
And you knew about escorts.com back in 2007, right?
Yes,
Okay. And in no time did any law enforcement, to your knowledge, try and find out what information escorts.com had about the business Models Inc., right?
yes.
Okay. You indicated that no client lists or words to that effect, but you didn't find any client lists on Ms. Bergfeld's computer, is that correct?
Relating to Models Inc., that is correct.
Okay. You also didn't find any correspondence with potential clients related to Models Inc., is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, the fact of the matter is, not every communication with a client that occurs on the computer, you would necessarily be able to find after the fact, isn't that true?
That is true.
Particularly if those communications were happening through a chat service ran by escorts.com, right?
You potentially can pick up, if the keywords hit on it and it stored it in the temporary internet files, you potentially could pick up chat information. I have picked it up before.
Well, and we see somewhat of an example on that because apparently Mr. Jones was using the Toshiba to chat with people at hornymatches.com, right?
Yes,
And we see that, right?
yes.
But if you're chatting with somebody at escorts.com, that system is set up so that the data is contained at escorts.com. And if you delete as quickly as you can your browser history, it is not unlikely you're going to be overwriting a lot of stuff. Would you agree?
If it's overwritten by other data, you are correct.
Okay. I guess the other point that's important that you just made was, and you got to pick up, even if that stuff hasn't been overwritten and there's a fragment somewhere in the hard drive under unallocated space or whatever, if you don't hit the right keyword search, you're still not going to pick that stuff up, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, let's transition to these keyword searches. Can I publish 904, Judge?
Do you have an objection?
I don't believe 904 was admitted, Judge.
Oh,
904 has not been admitted.
you have a second?
Sure.
So, here.
Oh, yeah, and then on mine.
I don't see 904, I see a bunch of letters. Judge, I hadn't planned on admitting 904. It's my understanding Mr. Colvin wants to. I have no objection to him taking a copy of mine, although I'll let the court know I had highlighted it of the top of the words I was going to be talking to Investigator Pachota on, so I have no objection to that.
Mr. Colvin?
First up, if with permission, I'd like to show People's Exhibit 904 to the witness. And I would acknowledge there's highlighting on it that was put on by prosecution purely for their purposes, and the highlighting's really not pertinent to what we're talking about from my perspective.
Are you asking for 904 to be admitted?
Yes.
I think that's part of what Mr. Rubenstein said, is you're not objecting to it being admitted as well?
No, sir.
All right, so 904 is admitted, and you can approach and show that to the witness if you wish.
Well, let me just make sure we're all on the same page. Are these the keyword searches you were talking about before?
Yes.
Okay. Permission to publish.
That's fine. Thank you.
No objection.
Now, the keyword searches, I mean, it's something that the programs you're using to analyze the data from the computers they allow you to do these keyword searches. They run scripts, and you put in words, and those words are searched on the computer you're analyzing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And what we're looking at here, and I'm going to blow it up in a second, but just talking about it in general. What we're looking at here is the history of the words you've looked up, right?
During this investigation, yes.
Okay. And specifically, what we're looking up here is we're looking up things that are searched for on Mr. Jones' Toshiba laptop. Is that correct?
These are things that I searched for on his laptop.
Right. So the words are words you asked the program to look for, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so the cool thing about this is that we can kind of see from this the history of the investigative process almost. Would you agree?
It is a fragment of it, yes.
Right. A lot of other things are going on. But it certainly reflects your evolving interests in things you want to know about. Fair?
Fair.
Okay. So at the beginning, obviously, you're looking at things that are pretty logical. You're looking for Ms. Bergfeld's information, et cetera. Is that right?
That is correct.
Some of the information you're looking for here are things that, based upon other investigators' information, you now know that's something you're interested in looking for, right?
Yes.
So you're engaged in your analysis of the computer, but you're also engaged in conversations with other investigators. In that process, you're developing this evolving keyword search.
Yes, primarily I get it from the lead, but yes, I have input as well as to what keywords I use.
Okay. So, okay, just so we're clear, when we have that first column that says hits, that's how many times you're getting a result for that. Is that correct?
That's how many times that actual word appears on the hard drive.
Like literally anywhere on the hard drive.
Literally anywhere on the hard drive.
Do you have any idea how many words are on the hard drive of the Toshiba laptop?
I have absolutely no idea.
But there's a whole bunch of them.
I'm absolutely positive of that.
All right. So, a whole bunch more than 68,000. Fair?
Yes.
I mean, can we say it's more than 1 million?
More than likely, significantly more than that.
Okay. So we're in a number with a whole bunch of zeros after it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that's not particularly surprising to you, right?
Not in the least.
I mean, anybody who's got a laptop that they use with any kind of frequency has a whole lot of words in that computer, right?
That's true.
Okay. And you've already established when you find a word there, it may or may not have any connection to this case, right?
Correct.
Okay, so for example, you look up Page and Dixon, right?
Yes.
Page with the name Page, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you see 2 hits for Page, 4 hits for Dixon, correct?
Correct.
And once you have this done, you can then go look at the place where that word is, right?
Yes, this would bring me to another screen that would show me where and the reference of where this word is.
So if you see this keyword search for Page, the program lets you zoom to that place in the computer where the word Page is, right?
It'll bring up both files or one file if it's both on one that these words appear in.
Okay. So that's how you know, though you have a hit on Page and you have a hit on Dixon, they're not related to this case in any way that you can tell, correct?
One of the pages was.
Well, I'm sorry, except for that burnt car thing, right?
Correct.
Okay. Other than the burnt car thing, not related, right?
The other page and the Dixons were not.
Okay. So, and you actually did this, right? You went and checked it out. You didn't just run your keyword search. You actually went and looked at all these things, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so, after you do that, you have pulled out the things that are relevant to this case, right?
Yes.
Okay. And there's no confessions or anything in this computer that you ignored, is there?
No.
Okay. So if it looked like it was relevant, you pulled it out, you provided it to the case file, lead investigator, and and ultimately to the prosecution, right?
Yes, sir.
So we know if there's stuff on this computer that is relevant to this investigation and helpful to the prosecution, they're well aware of it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what we've got so far is a single picture of a burnt-out car on the Daily Sentinel website, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we were talking about your keyword searches. So the last searched, that's the date you're actually running the keyword through the machine, right?
Yes, that's me running these two columns when it started and when it ended through the machine. My machine.
I don't understand why there's a first and a last. Isn't the last searched column the last time you've done it?
No, they were done, when they were done, this date here was when I hit the start search, and then when the French computer said, okay, we've done it, it's done here. Sometimes it's instantaneous because you do what's called indexing of a case. Indexing basically is something you do at the beginning, which makes a monster keyword list to a degree.
Gotcha. All right. So the search takes the time between first and last. That's what you're telling me, right?
Yes.
Okay. So my question then is, last searched is the time you finish these keywords, correct?
The computer finished finding the keywords.
Okay, I stand corrected. What we can deduce from this is we can see, based upon these dates, the evolution of things that you are interested in looking up, correct? In other words, on August 22nd, we're trying to find massage, but on August 14th, we're trying to find page, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, September 4th under that black line there. You with me? Yes, sir.
The one waiting?
Yeah. At this point, you're looking up waiting, sinking, bodies in water, right?
Sinking.
Sinking.
You said stinking.
No, I didn't mean to. I'm
Oh.
sorry. Sinking. Waiting, sinking, and bodies in water, right?
Yes.
Now, these are search terms you're putting in. I mean, these aren't generated by some random computer program. These are things you're actually looking for, right?
Yes, I entered those words.
And you're doing that specifically because by September 4th, you have information that some dogs thought that Miss Paige Bergfeld's remains were left in a river, right?
I do not recall at that time why those keywords were given to me.
Oh.
They
So
were
you
just,
don't know necessarily what the lead investigator's thinking, right?
I don't know everything that's happening in the case because I'm in the lab working on this.
Okay. But somebody wants to know something about potentially waiting or sinking bodies in water, right?
Yes.
All right. Some of these search things come back with a whole bunch of results. For example, above that black line towards the bottom of this page that we were talking about, there's 22,074 entries for burning, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, prosecution asked you about that. That's a whole lot more than other search results, correct?
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is, you checked out every search hit on this computer, right?
Yes.
Okay. And if there was a search, if your search turned up one use of the word burning in a context that seems suspicious, you're not ignoring that, are you?
No, sir.
Okay. If there was one of 22,074 entries of burning that seemed to relate to this case, you're going to make dang sure those guys know about it, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of why you're doing this, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Can I have permission to publish both 906 and 908 at this time?
Do you have an objection,
No,
Mr.
sir.
Rubenstein? That's fine, thank you.
So I'm going to put up both exhibits 906 and 908 so we can kind of see them together. I don't know if this is going to work very well, so bear with me. We'll see how it goes. All right. So, whoops, I'm getting there. Okay. Permission to approach the exhibit, Judge.
Yes, sir, thanks.
Okay, so this is two different exhibits, 908, 906, right?
Yes, sir.
And you saw me trying, inartfully perhaps, to manipulate the size of these things, correct?
Yes.
But what we've wound up with here is this week is the same as this week, right?
Yes.
Okay. And our scales are out of whack, I understand that. But what we are seeing in 908 is all these porn images, right?
Yes.
And in 906, we're seeing computer activity, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the cool thing about this is we can actually match up the times of porn usage to computer usage, right? For example, I'm looking at the first column of Monday, which would be June 25th at 6 o'clock. The 6 o'clock hour, if you will.
Monday, the 25th?
Yes, sir.
At 6.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. So you're looking at the same charts I am, correct? You're just doing it on the pieces of paper.
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm pointing at right here, Monday at 6 o'clock on the porn use 908,
Yes, sir.
that's what we're looking at, is a bunch of instances of porn use, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then we can switch over and we can tell on Monday the 25th, the computer's being used at the exact same time, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this chart, NES 908, the data on that is in that sense encompassed in 906. If you're seeing porn use, you sure as heck should see computer use, right?
You should.
Okay. In fact, as far as you know, it all matches up, right?
Yes.
Okay. But each one of these little dots, I think we referred to the little dots of porn pictures, right?
Right.
Each picture is a dot.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Each number or each dot is a file, right?
Yes.
Okay. There's a whole heck of a lot more files accessed than there are porn pictures accessed, right?
Right. That is encompassed in the big number.
Right. So what we can tell from this is the computer's being used a whole lot more than just looking at pictures of porn, right?
Correct.
Okay. I understand some of those files might be files to get to the site where you can look at porn, right?
Right.
So indirectly, use of a file could be to get to looking at a picture of porn.
Yes, these are actual photographs, not websites. These are the actual individual photographs.
But this would seem to suggest, would you agree with me, that the computer's being used for a heck of a lot more than just looking at porn?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that could be happening here is going to your hornymatches.com site and checking out who's winking and all that jazz, right?
Yes,
Okay. And some of this stuff could be going to plentyoffish.com, checking out your profile there, seeing who's winking or whatever they call it, right?
yes.
Okay. Bottom line is, what we know for a fact is actual viewing of pornography is entirely contained in 908, right?
Viewing of those pictures that I found is what each little dot is. So in that sense, yes.
That sounds like an important distinction. I want to make sure we're on the same page. Is it that there is other pictures being accessed on this computer during these time frames that you don't have?
No.
Okay. So if this Toshiba laptop was used to look at porn, I think porn is pictures, isn't it? Right?
That's a global term, so adult pictures.
Okay. But there's no other porn besides pictures that we're worried about, is there?
Well, there is other porn, but in this case, these were just pictures.
Okay. So all the dirty pictures, I'll put it that way, all the dirty pictures are contained in 908, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, of significance. Continuing permission?
Yes, you're fine, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Of significance is the use of porn in the evenings and how it all of a sudden stops on the 28th. Is that fair?
Not being able to see up, unless you show me on here where you're at on that.
Well, 25, 26, 27, 28, right?
Right there.
28th is Thursday, right?
Correct.
Okay, 28th, you with me? Is this the 28th?
I can't tell you unless you go scroll top, but it appears to be based on what's around it.
Kind of matches up to your paper that's the same thing, would you agree?
I agree.
But let's double check it.
Yeah,
You with me?
I am with you, sir.
Okay. So as of significance, there's no porn usage on the 28th, right?
In the evening, there is no porn usage.
Okay. Now, one of the things we're looking at here is patterns of usage, right?
Yes, sir.
Because normal patterns of usage can be indicative of behavior. Fair?
Fair.
All right. And you indicated there's a pattern of porn usage, I think, in the evenings. Is that what you said?
I believe I said that.
Okay. What we're seeing here is, let's be clear, his wife's out of town, right?
Yes.
Mr. Jones' wife.
Right.
Okay. So when his wife is out of town, the pattern of usage is he looks at porn 3 days, not a day, and then he looks at porn another day, and then he doesn't look at porn, right?
Right, it stops.
Okay. Now, what day does his wife come back?
I believe it was, I don't recall the date she came back.
Okay. Well, assume with me for a second his wife comes back Saturday. On our chart, where would the Saturday column be here?
The last one,
Where
this
the hand
one.
is? This one here.
Yeah, the one before the hand.
Okay. So, since you're not sure what day she came back, I guess you don't know what time she came back?
I do not know.
Okay. So, what we do know is he's checking out porn earlier in the day though, right? If she came back on Saturday.
Right, if we're talking Saturday, yes.
Okay. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it appears there's a lot of porn use while his wife's out of town. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. It's also somewhat random. I mean, there's a little bit earlier on the day on Tuesday, later in the day on Tuesday, a bunch late in the day on Wednesday, a little bit earlier in the day on Wednesday. I mean, it's kind of sporadic. Would you agree with me?
To a degree, I will.
All right. But if what we're concerned about is patterns showing behavior, then just looking at the week his wife isn't there probably doesn't give us a great picture of normal porn use. Would you agree?
But if we're focusing on the week his wife is gone, then that does give us a pattern.
I understand. And I think we're on the same page, actually. If you're focusing on the week that his wife's gone, you are figuring out his normal pattern of behavior for the week his wife is gone, right?
Yes.
If you don't have another week his wife is gone to compare this week to, you don't really know what his normal pattern of usage of porn when his wife's out of town is.
Right, I only know that week.
1 week.
1 week.
1 week when his wife's out of town, which is obviously extraordinarily important to law enforcement in the context of this case, right?
4 time frames, yes.
Okay. But again, though this week is extraordinarily important to law enforcement in the context of this case, this analysis of patterns of usage do not reflect an understanding of what his normal usage is when his wife's out of town, right?
Concentrating on just that week, it does, but as a person as a whole, for the life of the computer, it does not.
Okay. And the fact of the matter is, you have no way of knowing if every time his wife is out of town for a week, he uses porn heavy one night, not heavy the next night, then he uses porn heavy twice, and then, right? And there's no way to know that.
Right, I have no other information of when she was out of town.
All right. And you've never even tried to find that out, because the reality is, there's no way to find that out for law enforcement, right?
I don't understand your question. As far as finding out when she's out of town?
No. There's no way for you to figure out normal usage of porn when his wife's out of town for a week on other occasions, because you don't even know when else she's gone, right?
Correct.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing. And much like... I do have continuing permission.
You do, I just need to make sure to turn the microphone. So.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
And just like in, now you can see the numbers, right? So we're at morning time here, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And just like we looked at, there's variations in the evening time of use of porn when his wife's out of town, there's variations in the morning time, right?
Yes.
I mean, some days he looks at a little bit, which would be a Tuesday, right, in the morning.
Yes.
Some days he looks at a whole bunch on a Thursday, right?
Yes.
Okay. So there's variation. This pattern doesn't really tell you anything about his normal behavior for morning porn use when his wife's out of town, right?
It just tells us someone was at that computer.
Okay. One thing this does tell us, however, is that if Mr. Jones murdered Ms. Bergfeld on the 28th, like he has been accused of, he's hitting the porn pretty hard on the day after, right? Look,
Yes.
you with me? What
Yes, sir.
day is the 29th, the day after?
Right, the Friday.
Okay. And that Friday, we go down that column, hitting the porn pretty hard, right?
There are porn hits, yes.
Okay. Not the biggest porn day, I understand that. But he's hitting the porn, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You do your keyword searches that we talked about on Mr. Jones' computer. We went over that list, right?
Yes, sir.
You also do keyword searches on Ms. Bergfeld's computer, right?
Yes, sir.
You also do keyword searches on the Dell Tower, the house computer, if you will, for the Joneses?
Yes, they were combined, that list you showed.
Oh, thank you.
Or no, they were done separately. But yes, the same list was done on both.
Okay. Now, if they, law enforcement, lead investigator, prosecution, had ever asked you to do keyword searches on anybody else's computer, you would have, right?
Yes,
I mean, that's your job. You'll do what you're asked, right?
yes,
And they never, ever gave you a computer that was owned by Stephen Heald, is that right?
that's correct.
And necessarily, you can't do keyword searches on a computer that you don't have.
Correct,
They never, ever gave you a computer owned by Jose Tavera, correct?
correct,
Never, ever gave you a computer owned by George Corluzzo.
correct,
Never gave you a computer owned by John Livingston.
correct,
Never gave you a computer owned by Wayne D'Amico.
correct,
And so, no computer has ever been examined in this case other than Ms. Bergfeld's, the victims, right?
right,
And solely computers associated with Mr. Jones, correct?
no,
I stand corrected. No other suspect. Fair to say?
no,
None of the, all right, you win. None of the people that I talked about were ever searched, right?
correct,
Okay. You did examine other things that they gave you. It gave you no evidentiary leads, correct?
correct,
The other things you looked at didn't relate to the people that you know have been named as alternate suspects by the defense.
I never received any computers from them.
All right. And lastly, you have no way of knowing how much porn would have been found on any of those people's computers.
True,
Can't, never looked at it.
I cannot,
And you really have no way of knowing if the porn usage that we've seen in this snippet of time is typical for Mr. Jones other weeks. Would you agree?
I agree,
Although we do know, when we look at your chart and we blow it out, and I am now looking at 908, the week after when his wife's home, he looks at actually very little porn compared to the previous week.
that is true.
Now, how many weeks could you put up had you done the search for porn use?
I could have done the lifetime of the computer.
Okay, so we could have weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of time showing porn use on this computer, right?
That is correct.
And at this moment, you have no way of knowing if the week of July 2nd is normal or if the week of June 25th is normal, correct?
Correct,
The only thing you know for a fact is on June 25th, Elaine Jones isn't in the house.
correct.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
It was pointed out to me, I misspoke. The red burnt car picture that we talked about at the beginning,
Yes, sir?
the red burnt car is on the Dell Tower computer, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Not the Toshiba, right?
Correct.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Mr. Rubenstein, redirect whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I can publish anything that I have.
Go ahead, why don't you publish 908 for me?
Sure.
And then we'll go to FFF. Good morning again, sir.
Good morning.
Your Honor, permission to publish 908 that Mr. Colton was just publishing?
Thank you, Mr. Colvin. No objection since you're actually operating the computer and going to publish, is that?
I am trying.
Okay.
And I have
Thanks.
no objection to it.
Thank you. You can
Investigator,
proceed.
Oh, thank you, sir. Investigator Pachota, I feel like the conversation about normal patterns may have been missing the point of what you guys were looking for. Were you guys looking for his normal patterns of what he does on other days or other weeks?
No.
Were you looking for what was going on in his life during the week that Ms. Bergfeld went missing?
Yes.
Are you able to tell a lot from looking at that calendar?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about that calendar, because you're familiar with a lot of the investigation. Tell me if there's anything I ask you about or we discussed that you're not familiar with that particular piece. But are you familiar with some information? Mr. Colvin, I'm sorry, could I ask you to scroll down a little bit so we can see the bottom part of 908 as well? Oh, can you make it smaller?
I can make it smaller if you'd like.
Thank you. That's perfect. If we can just scroll so it's in the center. Okay, investigator, what I want to ask you about is, are you familiar with the idea that one of the investigators in your office, I believe it was Danny Norris, was reviewing some video to see whether or not a vehicle looking like Miss Bergfeld's vehicle and a vehicle looking like Mr. Jones' vehicle were both seen at the Crossroads Boulevard area where her office was?
Yes.
And was that on Monday night?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the idea that that was to match up with phone records that showed that Mr. Jones' personal cell phone contacted Miss Bergfeld's Models Inc. phone at 9:03, I believe, and 9:19 p.m.?
Yes.
Okay. I want you to look at your People's Exhibit 908, and I want you to tell me whether or not that information is consistent with what you're seeing, and then we'll talk about it, where it is.
It is.
Okay, how is it consistent?
There is no activity.
No activity on the computer. Okay. Are you aware that the information from the investigation was that Mr. Jones had called a couple of times, or maybe there was a return call back from Ms. Bergfeld's phone, but that there was no information that he ended up with Ms. Bergfeld that night?
Correct.
Okay, so the information you are aware from the investigation is that there's no information they actually hooked up that evening. And then after that, did he go home and get back on the computer, or did somebody go to his house and get on that computer?
Objection calls for speculation, the way that was phrased.
The objection sustained.
Are you able
Try
to
rephrase? Thank
Are you able to tell if somebody got on his computer that evening after that?
Yes.
Okay. Was pornography accessed that evening after that?
Yes.
Are you able to tell if it was larger than other dates?
Based on the chart, yes.
Based on the chart, was this actually the largest of any time?
Yes.
And what times did that occur?
And we're still talking, you're still referring to,
After 9:19 p.m. on Monday,
okay,
June 25th.
right. After 9:19 on Monday, the 25th, the 2100 hour,
Yes, sir.
yeah, there is nothing.
Okay, and then after that at 10 o'clock, did pornography start to be accessed?
There was one picture.
And then at 11 o'clock hour, was more pornography accessed?
Yes.
And then just past midnight, was that actually the highest of any hour of any of this week?
Yes, at 67.
Okay. So the information you have is that no interaction with an escort occurred that evening. Then after that, somebody accessed that computer and accessed a large quantity, comparatively, of pornography.
Right, somebody accessed a large 67 adult images.
Okay. Are you familiar through your investigation that Mr. Jones was employed?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the idea that he worked roughly 6:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., sometimes a little bit later, but that he was basically gone during sort of normal work hours?
I knew
they
they were normal work hours.
Okay, so prior to that time, were you able to tell whether or not he accessed pornography on Tuesday?
Prior to work, yes.
Okay, And then during what you're familiar with his being work hours, was there a lack of any use of that computer?
There's none.
Okay. Then after work hours, was there access of pornographic images on Tuesday?
Yes.
We talked, I think, on direct, that you're familiar with the idea that his phone was hitting off of a tower south of town Tuesday evening. Were you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay, and then he went to Walmart and purchased a track phone Tuesday evening?
Yes.
Is that consistent with a lack of use during those hours on Tuesday?
Yes.
And then after purchasing the track phone, what happened?
There's pornography.
Okay, and then what about Wednesday morning before work?
There is pornography.
What about Wednesday morning, or Wednesday evening after work?
There's pornography.
On Wednesday, are you familiar with the information that Miss Linderholm had an interaction? Sorry, Mr. Colvin, you.
I think it was my screensaver, it should come back.
Okay. Are you familiar that Miss Linderholm had an interaction with Mr. Jones at his residence?
Say that again?
Are you familiar with, through the investigation, that Miss Linderholm had an interaction with Mr. Jones at his residence?
I was familiar with it, but I don't recall what date that was.
Okay. If I were to tell you that that occurred Wednesday, the 27th, would that be consistent with your chart?
Objection, counsel's testifying to.
That was it. If.
The objection sustained. You can rephrase.
Hypothetically, if that occurred Wednesday, the 27th, would that be consistent with your chart?
Yes.
Are you familiar with Miss Linderholm's statement about what occurred during that?
Not really.
Okay, hypothetically, if she gave information that the defendant asked for sex and she said no, does that sound consistent with what your understanding of this investigation?
Yes.
After that interaction, if that occurred on Wednesday the 27th, was pornography accessed?
Yes.
What about Thursday morning before work?
Yes.
Was that again much higher than on other dates and times?
Yes.
Okay. And then Thursday. So it says 56 there at 7 o'clock on Thursday, is that right?
Yes, sir.
So after that 56, when's the next time that pornography was accessed from that computer?
During the 6 a.m. hour on Friday.
Okay. Are you familiar with the phone records at all?
Not really.
Okay. Were you, hypothetically, if Mr. Jones called no other escorts on Thursday, but the track phone called Miss Bergfeld on Thursday, does that?
I know that happened.
Okay. And then I want to go to Friday. You said there was pornography accessed in the morning before work hours?
Yes.
And then again after work hours?
Yes.
And then on Saturday before Miss Jones returned, if Miss Jones returned Saturday evening, does that sound familiar to you?
Yes.
Okay. And was pornography accessed later that morning as well as the afternoon?
Yes.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that looking at patterns of other weeks was not your goal?
It was not.
Okay. Mr. Colvin asked you if a car fire in close proximity to your work is a startling event to you. And you indicated you believe that would be a startling event?
I guess it would depend on the person, but yes, it could be definitely a startling event.
Would a fatal car accident in close proximity to your work be a startling event?
Yes. Again, I can't answer for everyone out there, but for most it would.
Okay. Any information that the articles were searched for or accessed about a fatal accident occurring that evening?
No.
Now, you talked about this, how long these searches or this going on to gjsentinel.com would be on there, and I got a little bit confused because I understood that you said that you thought after 10 days it would delete?
If I remember correctly, and I'd have to look at my notes, that the setting was for 10 days on that computer, but I'd have to look at my notes to confirm it.
On what dates did you collect the computers?
Which set?
The Mr. Jones computer that you found, the Dell Tower.
July 18th of 2007.
So I guess what I'm confused about is if on July 18th that computer was stopped being used, how is it that a article that appeared in the paper on July 2nd was still there if the delete time was 10 days?
I don't recall if we collected that computer on that search warrant.
Hypothetically, if it was collected at that search warrant on July 18th, the jury's heard testimony about the officer that collected it, but hypothetically, if it was collected on July 18th, it couldn't have been 10 days if it was still there on an article from July 2nd, right?
Right, July 18th is after July 2nd, so it would be there.
More than 10 days, though.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yes,
So the delete time couldn't have been 10 days.
correct.
So it must have been...
It must have been one of the other computers.
Okay, I mean, that's at least 16 days.
Right.
Okay. Mr. Colvin, can I ask you to put up FFF, please? Investigator, I want to ask you, because there was a date on this document that I just want to have you explain. Mr. Colvin, could you zoom in to the bottom one, just where the writing is? That's good, thank you.
Whoop.
That's
Sorry.
fine, thank you. So that one is the one that was on the desktop? Is that correct?
That photo was on the desktop of the HP Pavilion.
The bottom one?
Yes.
Okay, and in the photograph that we're looking at, we can actually see the top one, but I'm asking you about the bottom one.
Correct.
Now, that says last accessed July 4th, 2007.
Yes.
How is that? Is that,
It's a saved image. It wouldn't be a temporary internet file.
okay, so if somebody at Ms. Bergfeld's house, after she went missing, turned on the computer and said, what's this stuff on her desktop, and opened it, that would happen?
Simply just turning on the computer and having the desktop appear would alter that.
Okay, so nobody even has to open it up to look at it, it's just the fact that it's on the desktop, it would show that.
Right, because everything on the desktop is then changed.
Okay, so I guess by that information, what you would be, your best guess would be that the last time anybody turned on that computer prior to you collecting it would have been July 4th at 15:30 hours?
For that picture, yes, that was the last time that that computer was turned on.
Okay, because if it turned on, it would go to the desktop.
Right.
Okay. The escorts.com website, is it your information that escorts.com saves their chats on their website?
I don't know anything about how their retention policy is.
Okay, but if you were to go onto Ms. Bergfeld's computer and she had chats on her computer that were saved, that would have appeared?
If a
In your
keyword
search.
would have hit it, yes.
But you collected her, you have her entire image?
Yes.
Okay. And similarly, if Mr. Jones was chatting, it would have been saved just the way this was saved?
Given everything else I've testified to, yes.
And given what you now know to be the lack of deleting, that wouldn't have been deleted?
Unless it was overwritten, correct.
Okay, but because because the computers were collected, well, I guess on Ms. Bergfeld's, the last time that computer was turned on was July 4th. So it's unlikely that enough information would have gone on to there to overwrite in that short period, right?
Correct.
I mean, it sometimes takes years to have a computer fill up all that information.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you about the keyword searches, that Exhibit 904. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The list of keyword
Yes,
searches?
sir.
Was it significant to you not just that the word burning appeared, and you said you looked at all the times and it wasn't associated with this particular case, right?
That I could see, yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
But it's still significant that somebody is fascinated enough with the concept of burning things that...
Objection, Judge. That's an improper characterization. I'd ask the jury to be instructed to disregard.
May we approach?
Yes, sir. Feel free to stretch, everybody. Thank you. The objection sustained. The jury is to disregard the last comment by Mr. Rubenstein. Thank you. You can rephrase.
Investigator, what I'm trying to ask is, there's significance to that word being searched that number of times beyond whether or not it was associated specifically with this particular burnt car. Is that correct?
Due to the volume
The volume of searching that particular word
that it appears inside that machine.
indicates possibly an interest, at least, of that type of thing.
It could.
Okay. The other similar words, drowning and other things, appeared nowhere even close to that number. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Recross, Mr. Colvin. Whenever you're ready, you can begin.
Wow. Is it really your testimony that the browser setting could not have been set to delete it 10 days because it's not possible that that burnt car picture would have been found? You're not saying that, are you?
What I'm saying is, if that computer was the one that had it deleted in 10 days, then it opens up that area in the temporary internet files. However, it has to still be written over for it to actually be gone.
And you just talked about it takes a long time to overwrite all the unallocated space, right?
It can.
And so the idea that we know that browser history couldn't be 10 days, that's absolutely untrue. Because in fact, if that browser history was 10 days, that picture had been deleted off the browser history. There is every reasonable possibility that picture would have been put on unallocated disk space and not overwritten, and therefore you would have found it just like you did, right?
That's why I said if that was the computer that had the 10 days.
Okay, but when you testified just now with Mr. Rubenstein, you made it sound like, oh, it must have been a different computer that had that 10-day thing.
That's why I said if that was the computer.
Okay. I didn't hear the if part. The if part's really big there. Would you agree?
Correct.
All right. Permission to publish 906 and 908?
Any objection, Mr. Rubenstein?
No, sir.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome.
Now, we just did a whole lot of questions about things that this porn use pattern is consistent with, right?
Yes, sir. You're talking about 908?
Yes.
Okay.
908. You recall all those questions prosecution just ran through with you about how it's consistent with purchasing of tract phones and running out to Wells Gulch and all this other stuff?
Yes.
Okay. It's also consistent with about an infinity of other possibilities. Would you agree?
Yes.
It is, may I approach?
Yes, sir.
It is consistent with this porn use on Saturday is consistent with the fact that he had a really sexy dream Friday night, right? It's consistent with it.
That's one of the possibilities.
Yeah, and there's an infinity of possibilities explaining this stuff, right?
This is only saying that it's factual that these pictures were done on these
Right.
dates and times. That's all it's saying.
And if you pick particular facts that you want to be true, you can say it's consistent with those, and it sounds persuasive. Would you agree?
But it is consistent.
But the problem is, picking of the particular facts is a subjective choice, right?
Yes.
And the fact of the matter is, though it is consistent with something, doesn't mean it's true, right?
It just means it's one of the possibilities.
Right. We don't know if he had a sexy dream Friday night. I just made that up. Who knows, right?
No one does.
But it's consistent with that fact.
It's a possibility.
Okay. And if law enforcement picks particular facts that they think are important, they can then create this chart to show consistency. But that doesn't change the subjectivity of the analysis. Would you agree?
Only on part of what you said. If I can elaborate.
Certainly do not agree with me on how important these facts that they're picking are, right?
All I can testify to is that what you see on the screen is what was in the computer on those dates and times.
The continuing permission to publish 906, Judge?
That's fine, thank you.
Yes, sir. Now, one of the facts of consistency we were going to talk, when you guys talked about, you and Mr. Rubenstein?
Yes, sir.
Was if you hypothetically assume that there's these phone calls happening on Monday, and the porn use is later than these phone calls. You remember that conversation?
Yes.
Okay. And the phone calls in the hypothetical were at 9, or whatever, and 9:18 or 16, something like that, right?
Yes.
Remember those questions?
I do.
And the porn was absolutely consistent with, there being plenty of time for those phone calls and then rushing home and doing porn, right?
Right, because it's an hour block. We don't know what time in that hour.
What we do know is during the 9 o'clock hour, somebody's on this computer, right?
Yes. You're referring to the 3:30.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden now, we're not just selecting the porn to look at, now we're looking at the actual usage of the computer, and you don't know what time this computer started getting used, right?
I do not know.
What you know for a fact is, between 9 and 10 o'clock, 330 different files are being looked at, right?
Correct.
And you've
Accessed.
Access, pardon me. You've already said, one web page could be a whole bunch of different files, right?
Yes, sir.
But 330 files is a significant number. We're not talking about 36 files. Would you agree?
I agree.
Okay. So presumably, some period of time is being eaten up checking out 330 files, or accessing 330 files. Would you agree?
Yes.
I guess when you look at the computer usage, it's not quite as clear as if you just look at porn usage. Would you agree?
One encompasses the other.
Right. My point here is, would you agree with me that if you select which particular facts to look at, it can appear highly incriminating, right?
It can appear that way,
Okay.
but
And if you don't select particular facts and focus on them, it becomes less clear.
but I can't control what the computer finds and dates and times.
And you also can't control the fact that law enforcement has decided particular events have particular significance. This purported phone calls out at Crossroads, you can't control the fact that law enforcement has decided that is in fact important evidence, right?
I can't decide that.
Okay. Have a second, Judge?
Yes, sir.
Nothing.
Do
you want me to
Mr.
leave it up?
Rubenstein, whenever you want to begin, Mr. Rubenstein, you're welcome to. Thank you.
What?
Thank you, sir. Investigator, I just want to ask you just to get some sense of 1 hour's worth of surfing the web. So I just, for example, I'm looking at, I think, well, can you tell me what the hours are on that June 25th? See where it says 692, 1,246, 569?
Yes.
What are the hours of that? What's the 692 starts at what?
So the 692 starts in the 5 a.m. hour.
Okay, so if, for example, somebody jumped on the web and started playing around on the web at 5:30 and went consistently playing around on the web from 5:30 until 7:30, what we're looking at on this particular thing is lower usage for the part where there was half hour's worth of surfing the web, higher usage for that hour in the middle, and then lower usage again where there's only half an hour. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Okay, so in that example, 1,246 would be the hour of how many files might be accessed surfing the web for an hour continuously.
Correct.
And that could vary, of course, how much what you're looking at, what you're doing, right?
Yes.
Okay, so later that day, the 330, that was the between the 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock time, is that right?
The 3:30 is the 7 o'clock hour.
7 o'clock hour, okay, and then the 8 o'clock hour, there's no usage at all?
Correct.
And then the 9 o'clock hour, there's 465?
Correct.
So if somebody came home at 9:30 or 9:40 or whatever, those numbers, that wouldn't be unusual or out of place for what we're talking about for numbers, right?
Correct.
Okay. And Mr. Colvin?
You want me to disconnect?
The significance of various evidence, you're aware that's the jury's job, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But you are aware that there are certain facts that you present or other investigators present, such as phone calls, and they get matched up with other items?
Correct.
Okay, so regardless of where somebody was or what somebody was doing, you're familiar with phone records existing at 9:03 and 9:19, that those two phones were in communication on Monday?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, I have nothing further.
Mr. Colvin, other questions for the witness?
Nothing based on that?
No. Mr. Rubenstein, is he under subpoena?
He is, Judge. I know he's under subpoena for the defense as well. We would just ask that he remain in communication with the lawyers.
All right, thank you. You're still under subpoena, but free to go at this point. Stay in touch with the lawyers, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
The people's next witness.
Your Honor, we
Mr.
call
Waite.
Captain Art Smith to the stand, please.
All right, thank you. Feel free to stretch if anybody wishes. Thank you. Good morning, sir. If you could approach, I just need to give you an oath, and we have a black cord stretched out across the walkway. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, sir. If you can have a seat in the green chair, please. Thank you. Then you can begin whenever you're ready, Mr. Wade. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Would you state your name and spell your last name for us, please?
Arthur Smith, S-M-I-T-H.
And Captain Smith, how are you employed?
I work for the Mesa County Sheriff's Office.
What are your duties for the Mesa County Sheriff's Office?
I'm a captain with the Sheriff's Office. I'm in charge of the detentions division, everything having to do with the jail.
Have you had additional duties during your tenure with the Sheriff's Office?
Yes, I have.
What other duties have you had over the course of time?
I started as a patrol deputy from patrol deputy, I was a narcotics investigator. When I left narcotics, I promoted to sergeant. I was a patrol sergeant. I then left patrol and was an investigation sergeant. Left investigations and was an internal affairs sergeant, and then promoted from there to captain and took my current position.
Captain Smith, how long have you worked for the Mesa County Sheriff's Office?
17 years.
Did you have any prior law enforcement experience?
No, sir.
Okay. Given those numbers, I'd venture a guess you were working for the Mesa County Sheriff's Office in 2007?
Yes.
And at that time, what were your duties?
I was an investigation supervisor. I was the property crime sergeant in investigations.
In that capacity, did you become involved in the investigation of Lester Jones and the disappearance of Paige Bergfeld?
Absolutely. I was the on-call investigation supervisor on the weekend that Miss Bergfeld was reported missing.
So did you stay involved in being a supervisor for a period of time in this case?
Yes.
How long? Do you remember?
I don't remember exactly how long. A couple of months, certainly I was involved in the case. The
Okay.
transition started to happen fairly quickly as soon as my counterpart got back from vacation.
Did you perform a number of tasks to aid that investigation?
Absolutely.
Was one of those tasks to recruit other groups to help search for Ms. Bergfeld at that point?
Yes.
And did you recruit Tim and Connie Fluke of the Abby Jennifer Recovery Foundation?
I did.
What was the purpose? What is the purpose of that group, as you understand it?
They are a volunteer organization. They assist law enforcement in searching for missing persons.
And so did that group assist the sheriff's office in this case?
Absolutely.
What did they do to assist in this case?
They searched huge amounts of areas. Primarily, they conducted ground searches. They assisted us in recovering some evidence that was known, or property that was known to have belonged to Miss Bergfeld. And they searched just really, truly large tracts of land.
Who directed where they would search?
If there was a specific request, I would speak with them and direct that. Some other investigators also spoke with them and asked them to search specific areas. When, in the absence of a specific area that we were asking them to search, they continued to search on their own in other areas that were of interest to them.
Okay. Are all the searchers that they use volunteers
Yes.
that you're aware of?
Yes.
Okay. Did there come a time when you were able to direct their efforts in a more specific area along Highway 50 here in Mesa County and running down into Delta County?
Yes.
What allowed that redirection? What caused that to happen?
We had property belonging to Miss Bergfeld had been found on that section of Highway 50, either in the median or on the shoulder of Highway 50.
Okay. And as far as things that they would find during the course of their search, what directions were they given as to how to handle those?
During that particular portion of the search, we had deputies that were involved or were there, and if they found something that they knew or believed to be related to the case or have belonged to Miss Bergfeld, we asked that they flag that and then speak with one of the deputies that we had assigned that was assisting them. Other than that, if they found anything during their searches that was of interest or suspicious or possibly related, then we just asked that they would contact us and we would go out and assess that and or collect it if appropriate.
Okay, so once items were flagged, they were collected by someone from the sheriff's office?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I want to shift gears with you at this point. Did you also become aware during the course of your investigation of an outside group that wanted to lend assistance in the way of search dogs?
Yes, we were contacted by the Volunteer Canine Scent-Specific Search and Recovery Unit, which is a mouthful.
It is. And who contacted who?
I received a fax from the woman with the organization. Her name was Margie Spencer. And in that fax, they described their capabilities, the types of searches that they could conduct, aged tracks, that type of thing.
Objection, hearsay, Judge.
The objection sustained.
So did they offer information let me rephrase this. Did they offer information that you thought would be useful to the case?
They offered assistance that I believed could be useful to the case.
And did you then request their assistance based on your conversations with them?
Yes.
Now, you indicated you communicated with a Margie Spencer. Did you also communicate with somebody else in the organization?
Julie Jones was the woman that I spoke with to arrange their travel to Grand Junction.
Okay. And did they ultimately agree then to come out here and help with this case?
Yes.
Okay. Prior to their arrival or upon their arrival, did you do anything to prepare for the searches that you were going to ask them to do?
I did. Specifically, I requested 2 pieces of evidence or 2 items from evidence to be used or for them to use in preparing scent articles.
Okay. And those items were in evidence at that point?
Yes.
And did you know the source of the items at that point?
I had collected both of those items. One was a bag of clothing known to have belonged to Miss Bergfeld, and one was a pair of shorts known to have belonged to Mr. Jones.
What was your understanding of the purpose of those items?
They were going to use those items to create a scent article so that they can present the scent article to the dog, and then the dog can follow a trail if there is a trail there to be followed.
Did you give those items of evidence to them to prepare those scent pads?
I retained custody of them. They prepared the scent articles, and then once they were done with that, I returned the items to evidence.
Do you recall who prepared the scent pads?
It was Sarah Platts. She was one of the 2 handlers that came to Grand Junction.
Once she had finished that process, were the items of evidence put back in the evidence room?
Yes.
And once they were finished with these searches, were the scent pads collected and booked into evidence as well?
Yes.
Now, who arrived to help from that organization?
Julie Jones and Sarah Platts.
And how many dogs did they bring with them?
Total of 3?
Okay. When they arrived, did you have contact with them?
Absolutely.
What did your contact consist of at that point?
I met with Miss Jones and Miss Platts. I gave them a briefing, a basic briefing on the case. They had their own, or coordinated their own hotel, that type of thing. We met with them. There were some of the areas that we wanted them to search are owned by the sheriff's office, locked and gated, that type of thing. So I assisted with getting them into those areas. And then I assisted with getting them to the other areas where we were asking them for them to conduct searches.
You said you briefed with them. What kinds of information did you give them?
I gave them information about the case, enough information about the case that they could conduct the searches that we were asking them to do.
Wouldn't make much sense if you didn't tell them anything and just let them loose to search. Fair statement?
I believe that's a fair statement, yes.
Okay. Do you remember how much you told them about the investigation up to that point?
I don't remember everything that I told them, neither did I document everything that I told them. I certainly did not tell them everything that was known to the investigation.
Okay. Did you have someone from the sheriff's office assisting you during this process?
I did. Investigator Mike Miller, he's a longtime narcotics canine handler.
Okay. And you had him along to help out during the course of these searches?
Yes.
What were you and Investigator Miller's roles as the dog handlers got started doing what they were doing? What were your roles?
Primarily, our roles were support, again, to get them where they needed to be, show them where things were, explain things to them.
During each search that the dogs did, what was your role?
Stand back and watch.
Okay. Did you take photos of the area searched by the dogs?
I took some photos of areas, again, that were controlled by the sheriff's office, that they would not have access to get those photos, and then provided those photos to Miss Jones, I believe, and they used those photos in a report.
Okay. Once they were finished, they provided a report. Each one of them provided a report to you?
I think it was 1 report, but it may have been 2.
Okay. Now, during the course of each one of these dog runs or dog tasks, did you guys take precautions to make sure that you and Investigator Miller didn't influence anything that was going on with the dogs?
Yes, the primary precaution was to just stand back and watch, to present whatever it was or wherever we were. We didn't, they decided how they would go about searching whatever it was that we were asking them to search.
As you were standing back and watching, did you give any overt signals to the handlers or anything like that that would have indicated or some sort of an influence on what was happening?
No.
Do you remember anything about the weather during those searches?
My recollection is that it was just summertime, hot and dry. There may have been there may have been thunderstorms at the time in the distance, but I do not remember getting rained on at any of the time that we were outside.
Okay. And the dates of those searches, do you remember that?
I think it was August 3rd through the 6th. We started the night of, and that's 2007, I'm sorry. We started the night of the 3rd, and then my recollection is I'm sorry, August 3rd, 4th, 5th. I think the 5th was a Sunday. They went home on Sunday.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have anything else for Captain Smith.
Mr. Colvin, cross-examination.
Happy to begin. I'm thinking I'm going to be about 15 minutes too, so I don't know if that affects what you want me to do.
Oh, maybe we'll just take our lunch break a few minutes early. Sounds good. Please remember all the instructions for the recesses, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you back at 1 o'clock, please. Thank you so much. Please rise for our jury. Captain, if you could be back at 1 o'clock, please. Thank you. Anything before we recess, Mr. Rubenstein?
No, sir.
Mr. Colvin?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. We'll be in recess until 1 o'clock, please. Thanks.